Vernomatic Productions.
Are you ready?
Live from the Metal Mayhem Studios in Rochester, New York.
We are gold.
And heard around the world by metalheads just like you. This is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Heavy metal music.
Your weekly dose of metal music, interviews, album reviews, news, and more. Want to be part of the show? Send us a message through our website, metalmayhemroc.com, or hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. Search Metal Mayhem ROC, a proud member of the Pantheon podcast team.
It's getting nice and heavy.
Now, welcome our hosts, John the Vernomatic Verno, and direct from New Jersey, Metal Walt.
Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy, and enjoying the end of Metal March. Well, you know what? We're continuing our unintentional spotlighting of rock and roll and metal drummers with a really cool episode tonight. We have legendary drummer Simon Kirke, the drummer of the band Bad Company. They're celebrating 2 albums this year. We're lumping them together. 50-year anniversary of the debut of Bad Company and the Straight Shooter release, their second one. Metal Walt, you did a hell of a job on this one. Tell us about the interview with Simon Kirke.
Well, this is our inaugural episode of celebrating iconic albums, whether it be the 30th, 40th, or 50th birthday. It doesn't matter. But this was a big one. And what I love about this one, John, is I reached out directly to Simon. I didn't go through any publicist or PR person. I explained our vision, and he was all on board. Simon he's just a charming guy. He was happy to be there, full of fantastic stories. You could just see he was smiling through the whole hour he and I were talking. Such great insight to these such classic and iconic, not just the albums, but the songs. You think about the songs that came out of those first 2 Bad Company albums. My God, they're still out there 40 years, 50 years later. We hear them all the time. It was just, I had so much fun enjoying the conversation as a fan.
You're right, because we're celebrating 2 albums, but if you look at the timeline, I don't have the exact dates, but they're only like 6 or 7 months apart. And back in like the mid 70s, that's how it was. Bands were just pumping these albums out 2 a year. Kiss did it. I think Deep Purple, didn't Deep Purple have a few of those? There was that continue at least 1 a year, and sometimes 2. So what one?
Now, John, another more important point here is shortly after I conducted the conversation with Simon, they were nominated for a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2025 class. So although we don't discuss this in the episode, guys, get out there and vote for this amazing band. There's no reason this band shouldn't be out there in the Hall of Fame. Paul Rodgers, Simon Kirke, Boz Burrell, Mick Ralphs. And just take a look at their own social media. Simon and Paul have been all over the place on the formal official Bad Company Facebook pages promoting to get fans to vote. It's a big year for these guys. Let's get them in the Hall of Fame. Let's celebrate Straight Shooter and the 50th anniversary of these classic albums.
Sure. Great point. It's like the second time this year. Earlier, we did the Foghat interview, and even though they didn't make it, they were nominated. Oh, no, they're nominated for a Grammy. That's something different. But even still, great band. But before we get into that, just want to remind you, sign up for the newsletter by getting up to Metal Mayhem ROC. There you'll get notifications about these podcasts that drop every week, YouTube videos, alerts for the radio show. Visit the merch page. There's tons of cool stuff on there. And if you like what we're doing here, subscribe to the pod wherever you're listening to this. Leave a review. It helps new listeners find these shows and keeps the metal going. All right, let's get into this. Simon Kirke, Bad Company, celebrating 50 years plus of great rock and roll. For Metal Walt, I'm the Vernomatic. This is Metal Mayhem ROC.
I'm with drummer Simon Kirke. Simon, how are you?
Well, I'm fine. Freezing a little bit. I'm out in Montauk, but everything's good. Looking forward to spring.
Thank you for joining me today, because we're going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of 2 classic Bad Company albums, the self-titled debut and Straight Shooter. But let's hold off on that for now. We'll get into that in a little bit. But One observation, Simon, you've been, let's say, the only member, you have the distinction of being the only member in Bad Company that's been there from the entire run. Get us up to speed this year in 2025 musically. What are you up to? What are you going to be doing?
Well, sad to say, Bad Company's probably played its last show. We did our last show 5 years ago, and thinking we were going to have a little break. And then Paul Rogers developed these health problems, which kind of got worse over the next couple of years. And I believe he came out a year ago when he came to New York and did some interviews for a solo album and revealed that he'd had, a heart attack and a couple of strokes. And so really his touring days are over. And because of that, Bad Company are now no longer. So I'm more involved, Waltz, in songwriting. And I've written with a couple of friends of mine a rock musical about addiction. And we're going to try and get that up and running this year. And I do, I love playing. I always love playing. So I do little solo shows. I do shows with a couple of friends of mine in the tri-state area. Frank Carrillo, he lives up in upstate. And Joe Delia, who's a great keyboard player out here in Montauk. So, I keep my hand in, but, I've had a good run.
That's it. Well, I always say, Simon, you between you and Carl Palmer of Emerson, Lake and Palmer, you guys go down as like the most physically fit and buff drummers I've ever seen up there. So I'm going to ask you a question. If you guys did a hypothetical arm wrestling contest, who wins?
Oh, me, hands down.
Yeah, of course.
No, Carl is, wow, it's funny you should mention Carl. I'll do a little sidebar here. When Free, my first band, when we were, coming up through the ranks, we went on what's called a package tour, which they were big in the 60s and early 70s. Multi bands would go around, 3 or 4 or 5 bands on one night. And I wish they'd do them again. I think they were great fun. They're a great value for money. And this was the lineup. So Free will open the show, and The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, and then Joe Cocker, then the Small Faces, and the Who, all on one bill. And the drummer for The Crazy World of Arthur Brown was Carl Palmer. And I believe we're about the same age. I think he might be a year or two older or younger. I'm not quite sure, but he's always been very fit. And, being a drummer, it's an aerobic workout every night. And that's always kept me fit. I quit drinking and drugging many years ago. That really helped because I was a bit of a lunatic for years. And I do yoga and I watch what I eat and I go on circuit training. So, I keep fit because that's what I love doing now.
That's good. Your blood brother from Long Island, drummer Roger Earl of Foghat. I had him on a couple of months ago. He's another guy who's in great physical shape, and we were talking about a lot of those package tours in the 70s that were. I'm only 54, so I missed the boat there, right? But I got onto the train around, let's say, the late 80s. But just a combination of bands in the 70s that would play together, big long lineups of rock bands, but then you had also these mixes of bands that didn't really make any sense together.
I guess they're covering all bases,
Yeah.
But it was a wonderful way of, going back even further. The package tours were started by Stax Records, and they did a package tour of Otis Redding, Sam and Dave, Carla Thomas, the Barker. It was an amazing way of showcasing a particular record label. And that was Stax Records. Then Island Records did another package tour with Free, John Martin, and Traffic, way back in the early 70s. So really it was and Sif Records, Elvis Costello, they did a package tour. It was a way of advertising the wares and the artists of a particular record label. So I think it's a wonderful thing. I don't know if it'll ever happen again. But the one thing that has remained constant, Walt, throughout the decades is live music. There's always been live music. There's always been there's a trend, and certain genres of music come and go. But there'll always be a demand to go out and see a live artist, regardless of the genre and whatever they play. And that's a great thing, It's just, I mean, the ticket prices are like, what the fuck, really?
Yeah.
I went to see Bruce on Broadway. I thought I was looking at the date when I saw what was on the ticket stub. But, it is what it is. There you go. Anyway.
You didn't get the legendary rock star fraternity discount from Bruce?
Well, I'm friendly with Little Steamer, Stevie Van Zandt.
Right. Of course.
And he had to pay as well.
Oh.
So,
well.
Come on, a bandmate of 50 years. So, that's another story for another time.
That's the entertainment and the budget side of the business. So, Simon, talking about your days in Free, when Bad Company was formed, there was a transition. You and Paul transitioned out of Free. Free, you guys had some good success. The Fire and Water album, especially, it had All Right Now and some other songs on there. But you guys, there was also some internal struggles with the band members. So when you guys formed Bad Company, like, what was that transition for you, like, let's say, personally?
Oh, it was fantastic. It really was. The thing about Free, as you rightly said, it was going through the last couple of years of Free were really hard work, drug problems, particularly from, only from Paul Kossoff, the guitar player, which ultimately killed him. So we were dragging this dead weight around for the 2 years of Free. And then we finally said enough, we can't do this anymore. So we broke the band up. And I went away to Brazil. I had a girlfriend in Brazil. And after about 5 or 6 months, I came back and I called Paul Rodgers up. I said, hey, man, what are you doing? Because we've always gotten on well, me and him. And he said, I met this great guy. He's just left the Mott the Hoople. And Mott the Hoople were a band on Island Records, same label as Free. So we met him a couple of times. Paul went out with Mick. He was supporting Mott the Hoople. And Mick said, I'm fed up with Mott. I want to leave. So Paul said, well, let's form a band together. So when I got home to London, I spoke to Paul. He said, look, I'm forming this band with this great guy. Come down and see if you want to play. So I went down to Paul's little house and met Mick. I've always liked him. Great player, not a genius, but a great player and funny and easy to get on with. And the thing about playing with geniuses, Walt, is they're a royal pain in the ass. Give me a guy who can play well and is a nice guy. I'm happy. So that was that. And then we had three of us. And then it was like, well, what are we going to call ourselves? And there are two schools of thought. I know my story in that there was a movie called Bad Company. And it was a Western. It was with Jeff Bridges. And we saw it on a billboard in a town near Paul's house. And I said, and Paul said, that would be a great name for a band. And yeah, okay. So we called up Warner Brothers in LA because, the whole copyright thing. And they said, hey, this movie, we like to take the name and form a band, name a band with it. And I think one of them said something like, yeah, well, good luck with that, buddy. But you can have it. It's not copywritten. And you probably won't be around for 6 months. 50 years later, here we are, But anyway, that was the story of the origin of Bad Company. And then to tag on to that, we wanted the best manager in the world. And we said, well, who's the biggest band? Led Zeppelin. Whoa. Yeah. Who's the manager? Peter Grant. And we got hold of Peter's number. Paul Rodgers called him up. And he said, hello, Peter. I formed a band called Bad Company. And Peter says, I know all about it. What? Yeah, he says, I never found out how he knew because we kept it under wraps. But anyway, he came to see us, and that was the start of, Bad Company and Peter Grant and Led Zeppelin.
Well, that self-titled debut album, I mean, Simon, you know the facts, but it's mesmerizing to me to look at it that, it was released 50 years ago. In 2024, it hit its 50th anniversary, but that hit number one on the Billboard charts in the US, and it sold over 5 million copies. Those are massive figures. And then you just look at the songs on the album, Can't Get Enough, Bad Company, Rocksteady, Ready for Love. These are all hits, staples on FM radio. But I'm always curious, when a band sets out to write material, do you have this, let's say, penchant to say, you know what, we got to get a song on radio, so we're going to try to write a hit? Or does it just happen and it's just dumb luck?
Good question. Well, when we hitched our wagon to Peter Grant and Led Zeppelin, he was anti-single. Zeppelin never released singles. They just released albums. And that was the beginning of FM radio around that time, early 70s, when stations would play entire albums. So that was the market that Peter wanted us, was targeting from us. And we never set out to write hits. Same with All Right Now. I mean, All Right Now is a huge hit, but it was born out of a bad gig because we needed a song for the audience to dance to. That's all it was. So when you came to Bad Company, the hits, as you say, were not top 40 hits. They were FM radio hits. And people would call the station and say, hey, man, I just heard that great thing. Something like Mad Company. Okay, you play it again? That was the sort of audience that we were getting, the kids in their 20s, and they drive in and they call in the station. And so we never set out to write a hit. We just wrote songs and hoped that they would, that we were good songwriters, but we never set out to write a hit. It's impossible. You cannot set out to write a hit. I mean, now with that fucking AI, I don't know, man. The whole landscape's changed.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff, I don't want to be an old fogey, but I'm not crazy about a lot of the stuff that's out there right now. It's drum loops, it's AI harmonies, it's AI lyrics. It's kind of clinical, and there's not really that much soul to it. Just some. I'm not saying all music, but anyway, that was Bad Company's creed, and we did pretty well out of it.
Yeah, you certainly did. I don't want to lose the point about what you said about All Right Now. I didn't know that was born out of you needed an extra song. But here's another question for you, Simon. I mean, that song, it's everywhere. It seems to be maybe even more popular now than ever. It's on commercials, TV shows. It's on the radio all the time. So I think for me, as the general public fan, when I hear a song at a shopping store or whatever, I'm like, oh, yeah, there's that song. I love it, but I've heard it a million times. But what does it make somebody like you who was there, who played on it, who may have written some of it? What do you feel like 50 years later when you hear that walking through your local Walmart?
Well, I'll tell you the good measure of a song. We took that song maybe 27 takes. Now, we were a lot younger back then. We had the stamina. But not once. I mean, when I say 27, there might have been a false start. So we stopped. There might have been a fluff chord. So we stopped and redid it. There were not 27 complete takes. But we started that song 27 times. We must have heard it back when we were mixing it another 50, at least 50 times. And not once did we get tired of listening to it. And we were the ones creating it. So when it came out, it was this huge hit. And it took us all by surprise. I remember Island Records calling me in my little apartment and said, you got to come down now to the office. I said, it's like 11 in the morning. I'm just getting out of bed. What the fuck? said, no, we're sending you a car. I went, whoa, you're sending a car? I was used to taking the subway or the bus. We're sending you a car because it's gone from like 89 to number 4 in the English 100. You got a hit on your hands. I'll never forget the secretary saying, "You've got a hit on your hands." So yeah, it never got to number 1 because some little punky band called Mungo Jerry in the summertime, they stopped us from getting to number 1. The sons of bitches. But it was a lovely feeling. I got to say, lovely feeling.
But it's withheld the test of time, right? So here it is, 5 decades later.
Yeah, like nearly 50, 55 years. Incredible. And it still sounds good. It still sounds fresh. I love the drum. I mean, I'm biased, but I love drumming on it. The mixing was great. You can hear it on a tiny speaker in the ceiling of a Walmart, and you can hear the drums crisp, and the singing's great. And it was a great song. And but it was the kiss of death for Free because we couldn't follow it up.
Well,
yeah.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk the 50th anniversary of Straight Shooter. If you're enjoying the show, hit the like and leave us a review. It really helps. We'll be right back.
Metal Mayhem ROC.
I'm with Simon Kirke, the legendary drummer of Free and Bad Company. So, Simon, now it's time to get into a big birthday celebration. Straight Shooter hits 50 years this coming March, and we want to talk all about it. So, again, another monster album, right? It hit number 3 on the Billboard charts, and it sold over 3 million copies. One of the things that let's say I was only 5 years old when that came out, but it was not uncommon that bands back in the day would release 1 or 2 albums a year or maybe one every 9 months. So how soon after the debut album were these songs written and recorded? Because it seems like, my God, so much great material that was put out in with 12 months.
Yeah, good points. I mean, back in those days, all right, before I go back, let's fast forward to now. And most big bands, they release an album every few years. I mean, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, U2, maybe certainly at least 2 to 3 years between albums. Back in those days, I guess what it was, and we were huge Beatles fans. The Beatles would release an album every 6-9 months. It was incredible. So when we had the success with the first album, we started headlining. The American tour, the first US tour was great. We were opening up for different bands and, blowing them off the stage. And then come to the end of 74, we had this wonderful debut tour as Bad Company. And we got gold albums to celebrate everything. So when we went back we never went into the studio to write. I wrote a few songs. Paul Rogers and Mick Rouse were the main songwriters of Bad Company. I contributed, and Boz Burrell, the bass player, kicked in a song here and there. He didn't write much, but what he did write was amazing, by the way. So we get together, in maybe Paul's house or Mick's house with cassettes and say, "This is what I got," and he'd be going, "Oh Christ, I hope they like it." You play a little demo on guitar or whatever, and you say, "Okay, I like that, but those 8 bars, maybe we could do this, do that." So you get a short list of songs. And so I always say to this day that on top of the success of the first album and first tour, it vaulted our songwriting up a couple of notches. Because the songs on Straight Shooter, excuse me, the songs on Straight Shooter were wonderful. Feel Like Makin Love, Shooting Star, Good Lovin' Gone Bad, Weep No More, one of my songs. They were really kind of classy. To me, it's my favorite album. Straight Shooter is in my favorite Bad Company album. So, and then to publicize this album, and there's a great story I'll come back to in a minute of how we recorded it. We had our first headline tour. So we played Madison Square Garden. We played the Spectrum. We played the Forum in Los Angeles. We weren't playing theaters anymore. We were playing basketball arenas. So it was like the big league, and we rose to it. You know, we had a wonderful second tour. So we recorded Straight Shooter in a castle in on the border of Wales and England. And Peter Frampton had done it. I can't even remember the name of the thing now. But we had a mobile unit. It was a wonderful Chepstow. It was in Chepstow. You can look it up. And we lived in this castle, and we got up when we wanted, and we wrote these songs and we recorded them. And it was a wonderful way to make an album. I would do it again in a heartbeat, because you can, with a mobile unit, you know, you can get up at whatever time you want. And, you know, there's no red light saying you got to get out of here. So yeah, that was great.
Now talking about those two songs, "Weep No More" and "Anna," and it's funny, my wife's name is Anna, and I was knowing we were going to do the interview. She was at work yesterday, and I shot her quick YouTube, and she says, "Oh my God, that was so romantic." But Simon, I'm always curious. Like, you wrote those songs, and later on in Bad Company, you did a little singing live. But how come you didn't sing on these songs on the album, or was it just Paul?
I remember. I'm friends with Ronnie Wood, and I remember once he said, "You know, Charlie Watts didn't play all the drums on every Stone song." I said, "What?" They said, "No, a couple of songs he couldn't play, he just couldn't get it." So we got Jimmy Miller to play on "You Can't Always Get You Want," and I played drums. Ronnie Wood played drums on "You Better Get Some Sleep Tonight." I thought, wow. So my point is that when you have someone singing like Paul Rodgers, you come in second every time. You know, he's one of the greats, and he should be in the Hall of Fame on his own merit, not Free or Bad Company, but that's another story. Paul Rodgers should be recognized as, you know, he should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a vocalist. So I never even put myself forward to sing. I did backup harmonies with Mick. And Boz was a very good singer, but we left the singing to the master, you know, Paul Rodgers. Yeah.
So that's good stuff. Simon, on "Shooting Star," I mean, it's a legendary song. And I wanted to ask you a personal question, maybe, because the first time I saw Bad Company, it was at Pier 46 in New York City. It was the summer of 1989 on the Damn Yankees tour, because I was 19 then, and I do believe you came out front and center with an acoustic guitar, and you sang that one, which was awesome. But now, knowing that you found your own sobriety and you're active in this forum called Road Recovery, does that song have like a special meaning to you, knowing what the song was written about, losing Jimmy, losing Janice, losing so many people?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was written by Paul. You know, this whole 27 Club, I think it's sheer coincidence, but, you know, a lot of people at 27, you see, when you're 27, well, you straddle the kid world and the grown-up world. You're not quite, you know, a real adult. I think when you're 30, guys, you know, we mature a little slower than the ladies. I mean, that's a done deal. But so when you're in your early 30s, I think you can call yourself an adult. But in 27, you're still hanging on to things, thinking, you know, and a lot of people like Jimmy and Janice and Jimi Hendrix was 27, and Brian Jones from the Stones at 27. But there seemed to be an awful lot of casualties in the rock and roll world around that time. And if you fast forward, it hasn't really changed that much. There are still guys overdosing and drinking too much, and it comes with the territory, you know. So when Paul wrote "Shooting Star," and he said it was a tip of the hat to Hendrix and a kid growing up, leaving his family, going out in the world, crossing his fingers and hoping, you know, he can make a go of it, you know, in the rock and roll world, and he gets some success, and you know, good behavior goes out the window, and you end up taking one pill too many or one drink too many, and bye-bye, you know. So it was a great song, wonderful song. And the reason I started to sing it, the reason I started to sing it was because Brian Howe refused to play Shooting Star. I said, "You're out of your fucking mind," because this is one of the great Bad Company songs, and he wouldn't do it. I said, I'll get to Brian in a minute. So I said to the roadies, "I'm going to sing this motherfucking song. I'm going to sing it. Don't tell anyone." And sure enough, about, I don't know, a third of the way through one of the shows, I got off the kit and they gave me an acoustic guitar. And I said to Brian, "Take a break." And I got a stool out and I sat, and as soon as I sang, "Johnny was a schoolboy," the place went nuts. I mean, number one, it was a drummer coming out from behind the kit playing guitar. Oh, he plays guitar. And number two, he was singing a loved Bad Company song. So we went through the whole tour, and Brian was not too pleased with it, but it worked. And yeah.
Well, we'll hold off on the Brian House stuff because I want a few more comments on
Sure.
Straight Shooter. I mean, Feel Like Making Love. Is it the biggest Bad Company song in your eyes?
Yeah, I think. Well, I know in terms of sales, and I get print every few months of the Bad Company song. Yeah, "Feel Like Making Love" is the number one seller, or requested, followed closely by Bad Company. But yeah, "Feel Like Making Love." And the thing about "Feel Like Making Love," this came out of two songs. And we were noodling around it in Mick's house. And Mick had this little down, down, gong, 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 gong. He had a little sort of country song. "When I think about you think about love," I thought pedal steel, I don't know. And then, we put that aside, and Paul had this, "Well, I got this rock and roll riff, like a heavy metal riff." And I said, "Hang on, whoa, why don't you combine the two? Because both of them by themselves, not great. Try it." So we went that famous little and it starts off, nice. Then it becomes this sort of pelvic thrust of the chorus. And when we recorded it, Clearwell Castle, that was the name of the place.
Okay.
Clearwell Castle. And we came back to the studio to listen to the playback. Our mouths just dropped because, wow, it was a special song, but that's the story. It came out of two songs.
Well, you taught me something new. I didn't know that. Now, Simon, talking about the album cover, right? The cover depicts two red dice on a craps table, and then I was playing around today looking at some of this, let's say, memorabilia for you guys online, and there's the sleeves of the album, and it shows that you guys were out in tuxedos. Right. You're somewhere, but was there any meaning behind, let's say, why the dice were turned to number 5 and 6, and then on the 6, there's the digit 3917. There's got to be some significance. What is it?
Yeah, man, it's the coordinates of when the UFOs are going to land. No, it's a lot of bullshit. You know what it was? Okay, for a start, it was shot in the Victoria Sporting Club in London, one of the few casinos at the time that were allowed in London. And we were all hungover because we've been out partying. There were, I think, 2 or 3 lady croupiers were getting a little bit of money, and they were gorgeous. So we shot it around 11 in the morning. And I know the name of the album is called Straight Shooter. Apparently Straight Shooter, I didn't know this. If you shoot craps and you're on a roll and you keep hitting whatever that magic number is, it's 7 or 11 or whatever, you're called a straight shooter. So yeah, that came, I don't know how it came into our little lexicon of ideas, but we went into that casino with the photographer knowing that was going to be the title of the album. And because it was based on a craps game, he wanted us to keep throwing the dice at the lens. the camera was in the craps table on the base on the green on the cushion, and we just threw the dice, kept throwing it, I don't know, 50 times, slowly at the lens, and he caught it. There was no CGI back in those days, and he caught it. So, and that was the registration number of the dice. I mean, that's all it was, plain and simple. And we went through the contact sheets, and those were that was the one shot that came out crisp and clear. And yeah, that's how it ended up on the cover. Yeah.
Great stories about the rock and roll history of Bad Company. So are there any plans to celebrate this? Any special releases, anything coming out on the website or anything?
I think so, because, recently, me and Paul, like a lot of our contemporaries, we sold our catalogs to a company called Primary Way. And I remember Bowie telling me years ago, he was the first guy to ever do it. He said, you got to do it, son, because we only have a certain shelf life. Bands only have a certain shelf life, unless you're Led Zeppelin or maybe with the Stones. But there's a certain curve, and you get to the top of that curve, and sales start to dwindle because generations change. You don't tour so much, la, la, la. But if you sell at your height and get a very good price, and that's what we did. So they're called Primary Way. They're based in Manhattan. I did a big thing on Sirius Radio for the 50th anniversary of Back Co. And I'm sure there'll be one, this year for Straight Tube. I hope so.
That's great. Well, Simon, we really appreciate you giving us the skinny behind those first two albums. Amazing stories. It's like a rock book opened up. So we did want to talk a little bit about the Brian Howe era, and I want you to tell the story about Shooting Star. But, as I said, for me, this was where I kind of came into the fold. I mean, I was a young kid during the Paul Rodgers era, but I never got a chance to see him live. And to me, the Brian era was a little underappreciated, and I think it deserves a little more love. I mean, there were some good songs. No Smoke Without a Fire, Holy Water, If You Needed Somebody. How about that? But maybe the question for you is, was this shift in style more of a direct influence in bringing Brian in, or was it, let's say, more of the sign of the times that you guys were just kind of chasing what was trending in the late 80s and early 90s?
Good question, Walt. Yeah, it's a little bit of both, I'll be honest. And what happened was Brian, so Paul left the band, basically. He said, I'm fed up with touring. We were touring way too much. This is around the early 80s, maybe 82. We had an acrimonious breakup. We went on our separate ways. And then about a year, maybe 18 months later, Ahmet Erdogan, the head of president of Atlantic Records, called me and Mick. He said, I need to speak to you guys. Listen, Bad Company has sold millions and millions of records. You spent nearly 8 years building this thing up. You're just going to let it go? Why don't you get another singer in? And yes, I looked at Mick and said, you know what? He's right. And I'll be honest, there was a little bit of ill feeling towards Paul when he left. There was never an official breakup. He just said, I'm done. And he left, and he did his own solo thing, and he went on. So we're left drumming our fingers thinking, well, what the fuck's going on? So I got a call. I was friendly with Mick Jones from Foreigner, and I spoke to Mick. He said, look, I've been grooming this English guy called Brian Howe to take over from Lou Gramm, who was also getting tired of touring with Foreigner. He wanted a break, maybe a permanent, but Lou's changed his mind and he wants to stay with the band. And so this kid is just, he's good. I said, what do you mean? Well, he's a good singer. He's not quite like Paul. That was an understatement. But he's eager, he's young, he wants to work. You want to try him out. So we got together, and I got to say, I liked him. I wasn't crazy about his singing, but he was a good singer, but more in the heavy metal hair band style, not not blues soul like Paul, or soul and rock like Paul Rogers, but he was okay. So we took him on board. And the interesting thing is, Walt, like you know, when Brian passed away a few years ago, they asked me for a quote, etc., etc., and all these things came on the website, and Facebook, about how no one had never really heard of the original Bad Company because they were too young. They were like you; they were like 5 or 6 years old. They were so. Fast forward to the early 80s when Bad Company Mark II came on board. People like you in their teens, mid-teens, late teens, that was the first time they'd heard of Bad Company. So, and they loved it. I mean, they bought Holy Water. They bought Here Comes Trouble. They bought those 3 or 4 albums. They sold in their millions. I think on the piggybacking on the success of the original Bad Company, but they were good songs. They catered to the trend in rock music at the time, which was the power ballad, and they kept the band working. I mean, it resurrected our career, and we toured for 6 or 7 years with Brian, and we had a lot of success.
Yeah, the tours with Damn Yankees. Again, I was at the Pier 46, and then the summer after at the PNC Bank Art Center in New Jersey. I remember those. I actually, if you take a look at over right behind me, if I'm pointing my finger, you see it. There's a Damn Yankees on my wall.
Yeah,
I got to meet Ted Nugent at that show at the PNC, but
you
I had a laminate. Well, tell us any good Ted stories.
Ted, he's a character, man. I mean, I'm not a fan of Trump, but that guy, I mean, he could have run for president in the 80s, and he would have probably won it. Certainly would have won Michigan. The thing about Ted, he says he's never had a drink or drug in his life. I had something slightly different, but I won't go into it. I don't know if it's true or not. But he was this guy who was like the old pioneers from the 1800s, Well, first time I met Ted, he was opening for Bad Company somewhere in the Midwest. And I said, "Hey, I'm Simon. Nice to meet you." I shook his hand. He said, "I killed my own guitar strap." I said, "What are you fucking talking about?" He said, "This guitar strap, what I'm wearing, is from a raccoon. I shot it a week ago." I said, "Okay, I've never met anyone who said he's killed his own guitar strap. But all right, nice to meet you, Ted." And the thing about him, he's all bluff and bluster when he's with lots of people. But on his own, he was actually not any different. He was still this larger than life guy. And I would come in from my partying because I was doing a lot of drugs and drinking back in those days. And, after a gig, we'd go to a nightclub or strip club or whatever. And I get in like 5 a.m. into the hotel. They're vacuuming the lobby and polishing. And Ted would just be coming down, and he'd be meeting with a bunch of his bow hunters. He was a big bow hunter fan. He'd go out and shoot things with a bow and arrow. And every place that we went, with Bad Company, Damn Yankees, there would be 4 or 5 of these guys in camouflage, and fucking eye patches. And they go out in the woods and they'd shoot things. And then he'd come back and do a show the next, the same evening. He's a character, man, I'll tell you.
So, yeah, that's world goes round, right?
Yeah.
So, Simon, tell us the story. Why wouldn't Brian sing Shooting Star?
I don't know. And things started to go a little awry after about a year or two. He had his own way of doing things. And I honestly don't know, because he wanted to do, oh God, this was the beginning of the end. He wanted to do a medley. He wanted to roll Bad Company into Feel Like Making Love, into Rocksteady. And I said, "No, fucking way. We're not doing a medley. We're doing the songs as they were written, one after the other on the set list." One gig, he wouldn't come out of the dressing room. I'll never forget, we're in Mobile, Alabama. And, the tour manager comes in, 2 minutes, guys. So we get on the side of the stage. "Where's Brian?" "Oh." So he goes, knocks on. Brian says, "I'm not coming out." Toby comes to me and says, Brian's not coming out. I rushed down the crowd. The crowd are now slow hand clapping. I said, Brian, what the fuck's going on? He said, I don't feel like playing. I said, well, tell the 10,000 people out there in the audience, I don't feel like, what are you talking about? I don't feel like playing. I'm not appreciated. I said, well, this is not the right way to go around getting appreciated. You got to come out now, my friend. Otherwise, we're going to be sued, and you will be sued millions of dollars. He came out like his ass was on fire. But it was the beginning of this weird rift between Brian and the three of us. And it started when he said, I'm not doing Sheep Star. It's something like, it's a miserable song. It has a message that it is one of warning to kids about drinking and drugging. I wouldn't say it's miserable. Anyway, so that really set the pattern for, and over the years, we gradually drifted apart. And after 7 years, we parted ways.
Yeah. I know
Same.
you brought Robert Hart in for one album and a tour. So to do that one out there. I think he's still out there doing in the UK. Saw something advertised where he's playing a little Bad Company show or something. I don't know.
Robert was a little more like Paul, bluesy. He was a great looking guy. He was fun to be around. And, after rehearsal with Brian, we called Robert up and say, hey, come down and play Rocksteady. And, Brian would gone in his car or whatever. And Robert would come in and say, is the coast clear? And he said, get on that fucking mic. And he used to do Rocksteady. And it sounded, much more like Paul. So we asked him to join the band. Now, I got to be honest, at this point in our career, I was getting wasted. I was a mess. Mid-90s, I was really not in good shape. Neither was Mick Ralph. So after one tour, which was pretty good, I mean, we did well, but I was burned out and I went into rehab, and the band really, that was it, broke up until Paul Rodgers came back in 3 or 4 years later. Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, how many years have you been sober?
I'm coming up. I haven't done coke for 30 years. I stopped drinking about 10 years ago, forever. I mean, I sort of tapered it off, but no, I haven't had a drink for over 10 years. I don't miss it.
Congratulations on that.
Thank
You did
you.
your partying, but congratulations on that. So, Simon, these are great stories. Before we let you go, I got to ask a couple questions on a few other things. You were part of the Ringo Starr All-Star Band. What was that like? What kind of wisdom would Ringo instill on this all-star band of guys that have just as much credibility as him?
Well, look, there's credibility, and then there's Beatles credibility. And they won a Grammy on Sunday night. They won a Grammy. I mean, where are we now? 2025. That was over. They were formed in 62. So 63 years later, they still influence people. So when it comes to playing with a Beatle, number one, the great thing about the All-Star Band was the musicians. I mean, these were top guys. And for the first time ever, I was playing outside of Free and Bad Company. I was playing with Jack Bruce from Cream. I was playing with Peter Frampton, one of the most underrated guitarists ever. Gary Brooker from Procol Harum, Todd Rundgren. I mean, the list of people in the 3 bands that I was part of was stellar. I mean, they were wonderful. And it took the pressure off my back. We didn't have to worry about, was Bad Company selling well, or were we going to fill out this arena? It was all on Ringo. And by the way, wherever we went, we sold out because it was such a great chance to see a living Beatle surrounded by really good musicians. So, but we didn't play arenas. We played big theaters. We played comfortable places. We played a few festivals, and we played this place in Eureka in Oregon, and it was a high school gym. It's a quick little story. And it was a different gig to what we're normally used to, but it was lovely. The people were lovely. And we get on, we're doing the opening song, It Don't Come Easy. Don't come easy, but so we're doing that. Ringo starts to come on. And as he's coming on, doing the peace and love, this woman comes down the aisle, one of the aisles, bearing a joint, which is about the size of my forearm. And she's going, Ringo, this is for you, Ringo, Ringo. And she gets close to the stage. She's trying to get up on stage, holding this, like the Liberty torch, on the Statue of Liberty. It was that big. And Ringo's going, security, security, because Ringo is strict AA, he doesn't touch a thing. So the band are all leaning forward, trying to get a whiff of this joint. And she manages to get on stage. And by the way, she's beautiful. She's not she's a real beauty. And the band are like, get some smoke over our direction, miss. Come on. So these two guys get her gently under the arms and bear her off into the wings. And she's still going, this is for you, Ringo. This is for you. Ringo was like, oh, that was close. Anyway, where was I? I think I got distracted. What were you asking?
Well, I was just asking how the overall experience was playing for Ringo. But if that's just one story, I see where it's going.
Yeah, it was. We all got on well. Maybe a couple of little minor tiffs to do with volume. Because Ringo, he didn't like really loud volume. And when you have someone like me playing drums or Jack Bruce playing bass, the volume could creep up. So he would say, I can turn it down a bit, guy, So we didn't have to worry about bleeding ears or headaches. It was a lot of fun. The money was good. We stayed in 5-star hotels. It was a lovely departure from the grind of one-nighters with Bad Company. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah.
It's good to hear. I couldn't leave without asking this one question. There's always the folklore out there that you played that one show with Led Zeppelin in 1980 in Munich. I know you jumped up on stage for a whole lot of love, but were you actually out on a tour as sort of an emergency drummer in case John fell ill, or what's the truth behind it? Because he died 2 weeks later after that gig.
I know. I'll spend a few minutes on this because it's interesting. Now, here's the weird thing. I'm reading a book on Led Zeppelin a few years ago, and it's talking about one of the gigs at the Forum in LA. And it's saying now, and the road crew are bringing on a second kit for drummer Simon Kirke. What? I played with, and I don't remember playing drums alongside Led Zeppelin at the Forum. Maybe one of your fans out there could put me wrong, or I'm having a complete mental breakdown. But what happened in Munich, in Germany, Bad Company, we were off, we weren't playing. And Peter Grant called me up and said, hey, Zeppelin are doing a European tour, and they're only doing big theaters, small arenas. I go, wow. Because, Zeppelin, fuck me. I mean, they play enormous theaters. But Jimmy wanted to do something more intimate. Anyway, would you like to come along, and just hang out for a few shows? I said, I'd love to. So I went to, I believe, Dusseldorf. Berlin was the last, Dusseldorf, Berlin, Munich. Munich was the last show. So after the end of the Dusseldorf gig, I'm in the dressing room with Bonzo. He said, here, you want to play drum? You want to do a whole lot of love on the final show in the day after tomorrow? I said, I'd love to, man. Yeah. He said, okay, come by my hotel tomorrow night in Munich. We'll run the song. Because, Whole Lot of Love is 25 minutes long. It goes through different, anyway, so I think, maybe he's going to rent another kit. And we're going to do 2 kits in a warehouse and practice. So I get in the lobby. I call him. I say, John, I'm here. He said, come up to my room. I said, okay. So I go up there thinking maybe he's got 2 rooms. He's got 2 drum kits. No. He's got twin beds in one spare room. He sits on one bed. I sit on the other, and we sit looking at each other like I'm looking at you. And he goes, it starts. Dun, 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 dun. I said, John, I think I know how it fucking starts. And we go on our hands and knees. I'm banging on my thighs like this. And he goes, boom, 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 boom. Okay. And then off we go. Boom, boom. And we go through all these different sections of Whole Lot of Love and on banging on our thighs. And you know what? It was great. It was really, you can actually see it on YouTube. Sound's not very good. The camera's not very good. But afterwards, I was elated. But keeping up with John Bonham was like pissing into Niagara Falls. That's what it was like. It was hard.
Wow.
But I loved it. And the fact that he died a few weeks later, I was heartbroken. He was like a soul brother to me, and I still think of him most days, Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Well, thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
Simon, this has been a great hour of, we could go on all day. I could listen to your stories for weeks on end, but give us your socials. Do you have a website, an active Facebook page? Anything else you'd like to promote for us?
I'll get Maria to, I'm not really, I do have a Facebook page, and I have a website, and I will send those details to you. I'll get Maria onto that. And we'll leave it at that. Well, thank you very much. Really good questions. I always say that an interview is as good as the questions that are asked. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the gesture. And we do put a lot of work in at Metal Mayhem RC to come up with good questions and connect with the artist, because that's what the beauty of it is. So just as a reminder, again, head over to metalmayhemroc.com and check us out. Check out what we're all about. And leave us a review, as we'd love to hear back and give us your feedback, listeners. So today, for my guest, Simon Kirke of Free and Bad Company, I'm Metal Walt, and this is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Thank you, buddy.
Metal for life.
Thank you for listening to Metal Mayhem ROC. Check out our website at metalmayhemroc.com for information on podcasts, archives, links to all our live radio shows, and all sorts of info. Please like, follow, and share with everyone, even your non-metal friends. And always remember to keep it heavy.